Hi guys, if you may guess by my outfit today, if you're going to talk Game of Thrones, you may as well look like it. Yeah, today that's exactly what I'll be doing, is just giving my thoughts on the season 7, which has just concluded. It's been a week since the series ended, and I think that anyone who has been watching will have got up to date. At the same time, I promise that this is not going to be a deep spoiler discussion. I'm not going to dissect anything in depth. This is just a few of my thoughts on how the penultimate series ended. Now, I don't think I'm in the minority to say that I felt this season was a bit of a mixed bag. The first half in particular was much stronger than the second, but I just want to give a little context first before I continue. I'm someone who's read the books, and until this point, the most frustrating season for me was season 5, and that was because that was the point in which the TV series was outreaching the books. And that separation was a very painful process, particularly when things were contradicting quite severely what happened on the page. Season 6 then started with a kind of clear the board approach. It was a case of all out with the old rulers and schemers and in with the new. And it cleared many characters who didn't really seem to have any way to go. And that was great. It was shocking. It was sometimes very, very satisfying how this was done. And it was a great setup, I felt, for season 7. With a lot of the new power players and alliances coming into play. At this point, Game of Thrones had gone off script, but it worked. It was in keeping with the tone and the characters and everything that had already been established. And so season 7 started, and in much the same way, it adopted a sort of clearing the board approach. I felt this was, in a way, even more shocking and heart-sinking this season. For anyone who thought that Game of Thrones would end with just a screen of powerful women, that was pretty much thwarted early in this season. Dany's female allies, on the whole, just went poof. And yeah, I would say, in fact, that season 7 was bad for women who aren't part of the signature houses of Game of Thrones. Those signature houses being House Stark, Lannister and Targaryen. Those ladies were quite safe and they received plenty of screen time and development, but all the others were in a way lost their lives, they lost their freedom, and they lost a sense of contributing to events. I think Gilly, Sam's girlfriend, being the prime example, she makes the discovery of the show, and it's Sam who seems to dismiss it and then bring it out at a later moment with great significance. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Season 7 started, and it quickly maneuvered Dany into a very complicated situation, and the tension mounted. Audiences who aligned with her really got a sense that things were not going to be as easy as it seemed it would be at the end of season 6. But with this now mounting tension, suddenly things shifted back to Jon Snow and the battle with the Night King and his army of the undead. And I'll be honest, as cool as the dragons are, as cool as these frost zombies are, I do consider them to be the weakest part of Game of Thrones, particularly the latter. When it's around, the show becomes entirely about CGI spectacle. The plotting, the interrelationships, the memorable conversations, they're all pushed out the way. And for me, it's those things that are the Game of Thrones. Then again, I'll play devil's advocate and say that it probably does depend what you enjoy when it comes to fantasy. If you like high fantasy, magic, that kind of thing, that probably will be to your liking. If you are like me, who tends to prefer a more historical influence, I loved things like Rome and the Tudors, then that's what I prefer in Game of Thrones. I do feel that episode 5 of this season was the last good episode of the season, truly satisfying. And now I seem to be contradicting myself. A big part of that was getting to see Daenerys using her god unit, to use RTS speak, She managed to use that in battle, and it had never been seen before, and it had loads of impact as a result. People will be talking about that for a very, very long time. It was just that after episode 5, the last 2 episodes of the season felt a bit slapdash. There were loads of interesting characters, but mostly they were just standing around like pieces on a chessboard. They were silent, they weren't making a contribution in any way, or they were forgotten for long stretches. I had many unanswered questions. It felt like there were a lot of deleted scenes that are sitting on a cutting room floor or waiting to be included for home release. Did Missandei and Grey Worm reunite at some point? What happened to Gendry after he suddenly popped up, ran his rescue marathon, and then we never saw him again? Where is Ghost? He's not dead. What we instead got was a bunch of conveniences and suddenly credibility straining speedy movements across Westeros, which didn't really fit with the logic that had already been established in the earlier seasons, how long it takes to travel from north to south, for example. Also, it seemed to slip more into a case of fan service. It felt like fan fiction, as if someone was sitting around the writer's table and suddenly saying things like, what would it be like for Brienne of Tarth to go toe-to-toe with Arya now that she's trained, a trained assassin, essentially. And at the same time, the romance that seems to be so important going into the last season, it didn't ring true. It didn't have a sense of heart. It was very much seemed to be based on lines of falling in love with someone because they have integrity and they're not a sycophant, and that's kind of hollow. It didn't ring true to me. But I think the biggest disappointment for me, again for not ringing emotionally true, was the zombie hunt that Jon Snow and a group of allies, bit of a sausage fest, head north of the wall to go and accomplish. All the men looked the same in the snow. They barely spoke. They started to do rather strange things that weren't in trying to self-preserve. And when deaths did happen, and there was one very, very important death in that episode, it was completely lacking gravitas. No one seemed to really react to the severity of what had happened. Then obviously we got to episode 7, which I did think was a bit of a recovery after episode 6. But it still felt to me overall that at 7 episodes in this season, as opposed to the normal 10, things got rushed. And as a result, things began to feel very uneven. I am hoping that for the ultimate season, that they do now, I'm happy for them to take their time, if that will allow them to get the pacing right and to still sort of honor the characters and their behavior. So now I've had my say, and I would love to hear your thoughts if you could leave them in the comments below this video. And thank you for watching this week.